Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So I gotta tell you, I'm still hung up on this Maria Bartiromo's question, and Trump's going on about China. I'm still struggling with this because she asked him, and as I said before, she asked, "Do you expect China to invade Taiwan sooner rather than later?" Like this, in her view, it's a foregone conclusion, gonna happen. And his response is, "I do, because they're seeing how stupid the United States is run." You know, really, in a moment where the world is at conflict, this is what the former guy comes out with. Just insane. But hey, look, this is the guy who said Putin was smart and genius and savvy and very savvy. Crazy. Here to share some thoughts on where we are and just how nuts all this is, I've asked our good friend Fred Wellman to come talk with us. Fred's the co-founder of the Beerhall Project. Fred, thanks for taking time for us.
Good to be back, Rick. It's great to see you.
So I'm looking at this and I'm going, I don't know what happened to Maria Bartiromo. I remember her as a business reporter who was always very good, very factual, very on point. Now she seems as loony as that Janine Pirro.
Yeah, it's that whole there's a whole arc to it now, right? Where some level-headed people turn into fire-breathing converts to the Trumpist ways. It's been and you see it in the media, you see it in these talking heads, and of course you see it in politicians. Like here in Missouri, we have Eric Schmidt, who by every measure was a normal, easy to work with bipartisan Republican, and now is down at CPAC, suing school districts here in Missouri. And there's a weird conversion that goes into being dedicated to the cult, and you got to be all in. Otherwise, you're not fully a member of the cult. You're all in, like she's gone.
No, it's that loyalty thing, and you go back to, some of the crazier times. And I liked one of your Beerhall Project tweets today about Hitler. You wrote, "Hitler absolutely adored Mussolini. It was so over the top," you said, "it actually made him uncomfortable, and he avoided Hitler for years because it was weird. History has a way of repeating itself." Are you saying that our former president has a thing for Putin? Is that where you're going up with this?
I think he's a super fan, man. It's just weird. Just the way he talks about the guy. There's the folks at the Republican Accountability Project put out a great ad today, talking, really showing all the ways that Trump speaks about Putin, and he's savvy, he's so smart. He waits till after the Olympics. It's brilliant. It's just, I don't know, man. It makes me uncomfortable sometimes. But either way, it's just completely inappropriate for someone who is the president of the United States to be so adoring of a dictator from Russia who is currently conducting an illegal war where he's slaughtering civilians and causing danger to the entire world. It's mind-boggling. But yeah, that's a historic fact. Hitler was a huge Mussolini fan. He modeled his brown shirt essay. The brown shirts was a takeoff on the black shirts of Mussolini. The Beerhall Putsch was a model of Mussolini's march to Rome. The old goal was to take over Bavarian's government and then walk to Berlin at the head of his column of brown shirts. And of course, it didn't work out so well for him. But Mussolini kind of kept him at arm's length. Ruth Ben-Ghiat, in her book Strongmen, talks about it extensively. The very first part of her book about the strange alignment of these fascist movements in the 30s and the 20s.
Yeah, but the thing that gets me is, and this is where I'm struggling, because you said a moment ago, the guy in Missouri was at one point sane and rational, made this bizarre, this bizarre shift. I just talked with a guy who's running for Senate in Louisiana. He was talking about John Kennedy, who at one point was a solid Democrat, and then a little bit more moderate Democrat, then turned to a Republican, then and now full flipping lunatic. I guess we better figure out what's in the water.
It's naked ambition. I thought with a lot of. Let's be honest. I think what's happened is you could be pretty ambitious politicians back in the day and not have to be a lunatic. But with today's Republican Party and the loyalty of Trump, you have no choice. You have to prove that you're over the top loyal to the king. And again, this is the model for every authoritarian history, right? From mafia bosses to fascist. And so you have to be who's loyal, who's more loyal. And it's fascinating. You're seeing it play out in all these GOP primaries across the country, where they're just eating each other alive to see who can be more crazy. I don't know if you saw it yesterday in Texas, where the congressman's resigning after winning, well, coming out on top of his race, because the third place finisher outed him for having an affair. They're tearing each other apart in the goal to prove who's the most loyal and who's the most Trumpy. I mean, for me as a Democratic political consultant, it's high entertainment, but for our country, it's terrifying. Today, Don Jr. once again tweeted a negative hit about our woke military. It's like, my God, our military right now is deploying to Europe to backstop our NATO allies. Russia has invaded Ukraine. They're killing people. By the way, they're doing a terrible job. They're being slaughtered. They've lost hundreds, if not thousands, of soldiers, and we still have Americans, people in power, people formerly in power, essentially cheering for the Russians. It's disturbing. It's just terrifying, actually.
And you've got media figures here. I mean, I look at the Fox channel.
Yep.
Yeah, in fact, I don't even really know where Tucker Carlson is at this moment. There was a pivot at one point where at the beginning, everyone was, yay, Putin. And now that you're seeing these atrocities and the world is coming together against this. Now they're going, this might be bad for us. We should probably figure out how to not be so pro Putin.
Well, I mean, what they're trying to do is be anti-Putin and anti-Biden, right? And it's disturbing. There was a time when we rallied around the flag, where we supported the president, the commander-in-chief. They want it both ways. They want to hate on Biden, but still hate on Putin. And it's an impossible needle to thread. I mean, if there ever does come the most dire situation where we do find ourselves in direct confrontation, they're really going to be in trouble. What do? Do you support the U.S. military against Putin or not? And that test is coming. I mean, I call a lot of these guys traitors a lot. I get accused of it a lot, but I'm very comfortable with that word at this point. If you are openly attacking the president of the United States while he's coordinating a huge international coalition, doing by every measure a brilliant job in a very tough circumstance, bringing folks together, bringing people who, I mean, my God, Germany's upping their budget. Trump beating those guys for years. They didn't up their budget. All it took was Joe Biden and the Russians to get that going. So just have some common sense, but there isn't. The entire party's lost their common sense. Now it's more important to own the libs. It's more important to hate on the commander in chief. I mean, just tonight, Carlson was on there talking about, I was wrong. I was wrong. Putin's really bad. But, I think one of the reasons we were wrong is because Biden and Harris did such a terrible job leading us. Like, it's just, it's comical. I mean, it is comical, but it's freaking mind-boggling that you could have such a broken brain where you blame the president of the United States, who's coordinating an international coalition, for you not understanding just how evil a murderous dictator was, who's invaded several countries before this and has been ruthlessly killing people for years, throwing them out of windows. So, it's exhausting. I feel, somebody asked me the other day how I feel right now. I got to tell you, I'm just freaking exhausted. I'm tired of having to say the same thing over and over. These people have given up their loyalty to the United States in the name of power,
yep,
in the name of corruption. And I think that the day will come when we will find out just why these people are so compromised.
And the reality is, we brought this up earlier. The fact is Republicans don't have an agenda. They have no policy aims. They have no direction. They want pure, unadulterated power, like you said. And the reason they want that is, well, yeah, they want to enrich their friends and themselves, and they want all that, but they want to punish the others. They want to punish people. Look, I get the idea. We want power because we're going to make things better. We're going to go in this direction. But their idea is we're going to push back, and we're going to go after whatever. Name the other group. That's what they're after.
Well, there's no interest in actually bringing America up. There's no interest in bringing America forward. It is truly about peeling off people. I don't know if you saw the picture today of the governor of Iowa signing the bill banning transgender individuals from performing in women's sports in the state. But what was shocking about it was the picture was nothing but young white women. Yeah, like literally blonde. Somebody joked on my Twitter that the diversity in the entire picture was one girl had curly hair. And this is what they're doing. It's hard not to see with your own two eyes. Something we say often at Beerhall Project is it's right there for you to see. Your own two eyes see what's happening. Stop denying what you see. When you see the governor of a state signing bills surrounded by nothing but white citizens, that's a sign. And when you see activities like these transgender activities, the anti-transgender work in Texas. It's right there. It's hatred. It's bigotry. We don't stand for anything but hating people, and that's a terrifying place to be in the United States. And we have an entire party, I believe, that's dedicated itself to doing nothing more than tearing down others for their own gain. And it's right there. I mean, literally, there was no RNC platform. Remember, the RNC platform was whatever Donald Trump wants.
Yep.
And now there is no Donald Trump. They're just nothing but anger and hatred. I'm just tired of this. I was really angry on Monday, but now I've crossed to tired.
Join the club, and this is how it's been for the last several years. You're listening to the Rick Smith Show. We're here with Fred Wellman. Fred's the co-founder of the Beerhall Project. You can follow him on Twitter at Beerhall Project. Also, the website beerhallproject.com.
Beerhallproject.com. Of course, my own Twitter is FP Wellman.
And we'll get links out on social media how you can take a look at that. Now, here's one of the things that I'm looking at this moment, going, all of the news reports coming out of Ukraine are just heartbreaking and angering, and yet you've got the Fox folks, you've got the OANs, you've got all of this money that went into these places. Today, the news story that RT shut down operations here in the U.S., off in the U.K. Are we at a moment, do you think, that finally we're going to begin to investigate how much Russian money went into media communications in this country? Go back to 2014, 15, and all during then, how much went into Fox News? How much went into all of these cable channels? Because, look, I went to the conventions back in 16. I saw the outlets there and the kind of wealth that was in all of these outlets that you got like 6 followers on Twitter. How is it possible you got 50 grand worth of equipment and you're doing this for a living? Yeah. Where's this money coming from? And I don't know if we're now finding out more and more where it was coming from.
Well, exactly. And a lot of malfeasant actors. I don't know if you saw today, Steve Bannon's partner, the Mr. Guo, I believe is his name. I'm not sure how to pronounce the name, but the Chinese gentleman who's been backing all of Steve Bannon's ventures, he's bankrupt now, unfortunately, because he's also a crook. He shut down his GTV outlet, which was a big part of Bannon's master plan, which is where they broadcast in Chinese. So a lot of these guys have been backed by some very rotten people. And yeah, we're starting to see it. I saw something fascinating too, where I don't know if you've noticed it, but the quality of my trolls is really going down. I mean, and somebody pointed out today that Dr. Oz, for example, has allegedly like 4 million followers on Twitter, but he'll put a tweet out and only get like 10 retweets in hours. Okay, that's interesting, because if you have that many followers, the pure algorithm will jam a lot of engagement. So what was the engagement? Well, the engagement was bot farms. They have these bot farms overseas, and I wonder how many of those were based in Russia, because we're not seeing the activity anymore. But I do think we're at a moment, and I think in the larger moment, not just media, but in politics. I had a conversation with my friends, on the Midas Touch podcast the other day about. I feel like we're at a moment. I still feel the same way 4 days later, that it's like an earthquake right now. There's a faults work. So I live in Missouri now, and the New Madrid Fault is south of St. Louis. It's quite famous. There was a huge earthquake in the 1800s that actually shifted the direction of the Mississippi River. If you look at the map of Missouri, the border between Missouri and Illinois and Tennessee actually doesn't follow the Mississippi River anymore, because the river shifted from this earthquake. And if you know how faults work, a fault, the way it works is it builds up pressure, and then it slips, and that's an earthquake. And I think it feels like in a lot of ways we may be in a moment in the middle of that slip, that the invasion of Ukraine and its ties and it exposes that larger authoritarian movement. And actually, I do compare it often to the 20s and 30s with the movement of fascism, the global fascism movement, which had parties here in the United States. They had parties in France. They didn't take power, like they did in Germany and Italy and others, but there was a global fascist movement. I think we've seen a global authoritarian movement in the last few years, in the last 4 or 5 years, and this is that moment where I don't like to do historical comparisons, but the siege of the Sudetenland was the first move by Hitler. I think we're seeing the same kind of a movement now. Putin has made his move to take Ukraine. It's not going great, but it has exposed this global movement of who stands with who. And suddenly all these organizations and people that were able to kind of have it both ways, like you said, Fox News specifically, Tucker Carlson, Trump, had to pick a side, and they're having a hell of a time, right? I think what you're seeing is, the earthquake is shaking things up. RT going away is very important. It'll be very interesting to see what the effects are on organizations like Fox News and others, and let's be honest, the GOP, who have really had tied themselves at the hip to these overseas authoritarians. Don't you remember freaking Tucker Carlson was supposed to broadcast in Hungary, having CPAC in Hungary, for goodness sake, in Viktor Orban's country. So that's a global authoritarian movement. So it is, I think we're faced in a moment much like, say, 1939, perhaps, where the first move has been made outwardly, and the die has been cast, and how we react to it as a nation, how our leaders react, and how the entire global the coalition, if you will, reacts to this moment will be telling. I'm cautiously optimistic, which is not a feeling I use very often anymore, but I am cautiously optimistic by seeing the way that Europe has stepped up to the plate and the way the whole world has stepped up to the plate to choke off Russia from the international scene and react to this. But I don't know. I think it's encouraging to see that we're taking it seriously. I do believe that Putin has truly overstepped he's as they say a lot, he's over the tip of his skis a little bit. But these next few weeks are going to be really interesting to see what happens. And historically, I think we're living in historic times.
Oh, absolutely. You're listening to the Rick Smith Show. We're with Fred Wellman, co-founder of the Beerhall Project, beerhallproject.com, the website if you want to check that out. You got a thought, question, comment for Fred? Give us a call, 1-866-416-RICK, 1-866-416-7425. The reason I bring this up is, there was a story today that one of the ex-Fox News producers, this guy Jack Hannock, was there at Fox News, evidently has been charged with working for a sanctioned Russian oligarch to establish television networks in Russia and in other European countries. And you go, they understand messaging. They understand it really well, especially propaganda. And I'm sure they got their ties right here, and I hope some of that comes out in this as well.
I hope so too. That's my hope. I think I said early on, I'll say it again, is after the fall of the Soviet Union, we finally had access to the archives. After East Germany fell, and we actually got into Stasi's headquarters and saw the files. We found some interesting things out, right? And I can't help but wonder what lurks in Putin's files and archives, who's been paid and who hasn't, and what the what the information they have on people is, because it's clear that there are very compromised people working in our space. Yeah. I can't wait to see the truth on Tulsi Gabbard. I mean, I hate to think that Tulsi's whole story, she's just ambitious beyond measure, that she actually believes the bullshit she's selling. Oh, sorry, I did it.
You did it.
It'll beat me.
There's a quarter for the jar. But here's the thing.
About that,
I'm looking at this moment. I was looking at some of the stories today that I started the show off with. The fact that oligarchs in Russia have lost $80 billion. Their bathtub boats are being all confiscated up. Yesterday, one in Germany. Today, one in France. Not good for business. Their credit rating down to junk status. You got another Russian oligarch who's put $1 million bounty on Putin's head. At some point, the wealthy in that country have got to go, hey, you're killing us. You got to go. Right. And this is where...
Or even the average Russians. I mean, a ticket to St. Petersburg, from St. Petersburg to Helsinki today was $7,500 in the train. Think about that number.
Wow.
$7,500 to take a train from St. Petersburg to Helsinki to get out of Russia before what they think is going to be martial law. So there's a lot of pain in Russia today. And you have to wonder, what will be the price for that? How long can you hold out? I don't know.
Russia is a capitalist country. Good American gouging. Look at that.
There you go. Right.
But you said a moment ago that you were guardedly optimistic, and how do you think this administration is handled thus far what's going on in Ukraine? Clearly, there was no way this was going to be stopped. And for those who keep saying, well, Joe Biden should have been tough enough, I think that's, to use a Biden word, malarkey. But I'd like to get your thought.
I'm not if you know me, I'm not a giant cheerleader. I mean, I always was uncomfortable the way people would cheerleader for Trump, and I've been very hard on Mr. Biden in the past. I knew him when he was Senator Biden. I was in Iraq in 2005. He came over, and we butted heads a little bit when we briefed him at my command, because he was still talking about the idea of splitting Iraq into three pieces at that point, fully 4 years after it became a sovereign nation. So obviously that wasn't an option, or 3 years. So I've not always agreed with Mr. Biden on his foreign policy views. But if you have a moment in time where you need someone with a unique skill set like Mr. Biden at this moment, you couldn't have picked a moment. Look here. He's a senator for his whole life. He's an old school senator, and old school senators are all about coalition building, partnerships, going across the aisle, finding ways to work together quietly. There was never like a big, if you remember the old days, it wasn't one senator was always the Skyline Ranger like Ted Cruz or that. It was always they worked together in collaboration. It was the world's greatest collaborative body, right, at one point, right? And that's what Mr. Biden grew up with. And he's not a big talker. He's more of a pick up the phone and talk. He's got a warmth about him when he talks to people. I've seen it. And that's this moment. We needed someone who could step up, build a coalition, work with allies, not Bigfoot them, not claim all the credit, put the power of the United States to action. And I give him high marks. I mean, honestly, there's just very few things I haven't seen them. There's very few things I've said, we should do this, and within a day or so it's happened, right? And so I give him high marks, and some of my, I'm not an expert on the worst in Eastern Europe. I have friends that are. What I'm seeing is as much as we can do, we're doing. We're moving troops into position. We're stepping hard on what we can do. We're sending weapons. I mean, short of direct combat, we're doing everything possible. And I got to tell you, it's good to see because, for 20 years, the global war on terror, everything we used was hammers. The only tool we had in our toolbox was hammers. It was just a matter of what size hammer. Is it a drone? Is it an entire freaking army invading? So to me, as an old school, I took international relations back in my undergraduate degree at West Point. It's good to see the full spectrum of what we call DIME or diplomacy and economic sanctions all being used in concert as you should in international crisis. So I give them high marks. Obviously the jury's still out and the enemy gets a vote, but I do believe in my heart that they're seeing a tough time now. And then you couple that with a charismatic leader who's using modern communications very effectively, Mr. Zelensky, and you got quite the team, right? You on each side of the equation. Mr. Zelensky's holding people's feet to the fire, but he's being very adept in his ability to communicate what he needs and support that he's getting. And you got Biden quietly organizing, a massive coalition. So I'm satisfied. I don't say that very often, but I think we're doing what we can do.
Yeah, last question I got on this, because everyone wants to know when this ends. How does this end? Does this end with Putin flying out a window? Does someone take the $1 million and try and knock him off? Or do we just have no clue on how far Putin is willing to go? I mean, there have been overtures of we're going to be using nuclear weapons at some point. The thing with in Sweden the other day, where it seems like they're trying to cause some conflict elsewhere, so that they can start a broader war. I'm curious what your thoughts are.
I wish I could give an answer. The thing about being a combat veteran is, I did 4 combat tours. 2 significantly, I did the Desert Storm invasion, and I also did Iraq 1. I was the OAF 1 invasion. So I've had the ignominious history of invading other countries, the same country twice. And I can honestly say that even going in with the world's greatest military at the time, I still didn't know how it was going to go, right? You just don't know. Yeah. None of us predicted how well the Ukrainians would stand up to this fight, how well they would stay organized. The fact they still don't have air superiority, so they're still putting up a fight. The information war has been stunning to watch unfold, completely unexpected in so many ways. No. So I don't have a lot of predictions. I do believe that Mr. Putin has greatly overestimated his ability to win this war. I don't think he's going to win it. I don't think there's any chance he wins it. I don't think there's any chance that Ukraine capitulates and that he gets what he wants, which is basically another province. It's simply not going to happen. And yeah. I just can't see a scenario it does. So it's a matter of how bad they bleed and how bad it hurts his dictatorship. But you're right. Good stuff. But like somebody always says, I think how do authoritarians usually leave power?
Out a window.
Sometimes it's the end. Yeah, sometimes
out the window. There you go.
Sometimes it's a bunker. They don't.
Out the window.
Sometimes it's hanging from a bridge, right? So very rarely does an authoritarian like Mr. Putin leave policy.
There you go, Fred. I appreciate the time. Great stuff, man. Quick break. Right back after this. Stick around. You're listening to the Rick Smith Show.